Good morning. Welcome to Afrifama, and today we are back again. I know it's been like how many days now since Saturday, and I did promise that I'll be back today, and we'll be trying to go deeper into what we left last time. So feel free to introduce yourself, where you're watching from. And also, interestingly enough, is today I'm actually going live into two platforms, which is something new. Considering that most of the times that I've always gone live on YT platform, that is at what we do call the vertical lives. So this today is more of an interesting because if you see me looking at this side, rather looking down at this moment, it's simply because I'll be trying to get to focus on the both sides. And obviously, it's a lazy morning because it's like 11:20 a.m. And but typically for my day is almost coming close. Since I did start my day almost at 2 a.m. today. So that's why I was like, oh, 11 p.m. 11 a.m. It's almost my end of the day. So let me know where you're watching from, and ideally, based on what we did discuss last time, good to see you, Irimo. Thank you so much for joining. Based on what we did discuss last time, let me know what are your thoughts on the same. And obviously, we'll be going back to the Atomic Habits. It's a very interesting book which we have been following for some time now. In case you're joining from TikTok or Irimo, I know you're wondering, why do I keep on looking up and down? So this is the gist. Funny enough, today I'm using two platforms. So it just means that most of the times I do the vlogging at the YT platform. But then today I was like, okay, it's good to try to do a both. And since you have the book, it will also be interesting to share your thoughts, simply because this is my first time. I'm actually reading it, and my challenge is to read it the first time or the next few chapters while I'm on live, while I'm also discussing it. But the bias is when you're doing this live is you don't get to mention 100%. Otherwise, the system for YT or TikTok is going to give you a copyright infringement. It's good to see you, Miss Thuo. Good morning, good people. Thank you so much. Yeah, you can definitely tell them to ask any question, leave a comment, and obviously they need to subscribe because we are on the race for 4-5, and we want to go for holidays early on. So allow me just to check a few things and we get started. And Anonymous, it's good to see you again on that side. But this is so challenging. I'm wondering, how do I even manage two platforms at the same time? Kelly, good to see you. Good morning. So we are definitely reviewing Atomic Habits by James Smart. And I remember last week when we were literally going through talking on a few key aspects. That was on the chapter 1. And this was based that if you really want to improve into something, if you really want to see a certain change, then we have to start with most easiest point beat. And this is what guides us, and that's what James was actually calling it atomic habits. Because sometimes you want to do something which ultimately for most people is what they call like an overnight success, but it doesn't happen. It's mostly based on the simple things which we have to embrace. And this again, James again talks about boiling them down to the habit that we choose. So it will be interesting to see what is it in for chapter 2. It's very interesting. And as I said, personally for me, this is a goal simply because I feel as an entrepreneur, as a leader, or as someone who's really needs to grow. 2025 has been a very tough year, personally for me. And one of the best way that I've kind of tended to found, I would say, growth is basically due to the fact the little habits which I've had to implement or just to adopt. They are the things that have made me to be seen as an entrepreneur. But it's also quite interesting when I got to read this book for the first chapter, and then it was literally cementing what are some of the things that we're doing. And then I was like, you know what? I think we should do something interesting. So when a quick story is when I was a very young boy, I used to spend almost half of my time at local libraries. So because simply I loved books. But then when I grew up, I kind of forgot reading. So many stuff came up. So technically, also for me, this was like a quest, and I felt it's good when you're doing this kind of a quest with other people together. So yeah, and just a bit of recap on what we did last week. It was I remember one key thing that did stand out is when James saying why the small habits makes a big difference. And this is, I'll just do an anecdote. And he says it's so easy to overestimate the importance of defining moment and underestimate the value of making small improvement on daily basis. Too often we convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action, whether it's losing weight, a business, or even writing a book. So winning or even winning a championship, or even achieving any other goal. And we said a goal is what you yourself, you feel is important to you. Because what I assume is my goal or even a success is definitely different from what yourself you think. So whatever it is, that is what you think is your success or what is your building for your goal. Then most of the times as human, we think you have to do something massive for you to be able to achieve that goal. But that is not true. For you to be able to maybe achieve what you call as your success, it's deeply ingrained on the small habits or the system we do follow along the way. And this is why he goes on by saying, meanwhile, improving by 1% isn't particularly noticeable. Sometimes it's even not noticeable at all, but it can be far more meaningful, especially in the long run. And lastly, he says the difference a tiny improvement can make over time is astounding. And obviously, we look at that concept of compounding, whereby we say even if you are, let's say, to put money in the bank, or that's also for the saving, and it was going to compound over the time. If you are to come back, possibly maybe after 1 year, there will have been a slight improvement. But then if you're just to check for a few weeks, you'll not see that. And it's the same thing. But if it was on the negative side, maybe it's you deducting it. At the end of the day, you will find out that you don't have it. So it's the same thing, and is a very rather interesting concept, and whereby James talks about that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. The same way we've mentioned that money multiplies in the bank. So it's a very interesting. Let me know what you think, and it's good to see you, Miss Tu. Thank you so much for being our moderator, because I keep saying I don't know what I can do without your moderation, because creating it's crazy. And someone says, end up here. I tell you what, Thinking of that new challenge, I think I should do that. How do we pronounce this name? Is it Shion? Yeah, nafaa niende pia nipande mti. It's very interesting, but you have to be very good. Like, you know your goals, you know your system, but what she is doing, it's amazing. It's really amazing and it's remarkable. Some of us, we can only dream of that. So, yeah. So let's get to go to chapter 2. Let me just go, it's just in front of me. Let me know, you guys, where are you watching from? What are you doing? If you're in an office, I know you're sneaking, but if you're an entrepreneur, feel free to let me know what are your thoughts, your questions, and what you think of James Smart on the atomic habits. And obviously, we'll just start on this is the chapter 2, whereby how your habit shapes your identity and vice versa. And it's interesting because earlier on, before we actually left on this, is we felt like how do I put it? Sometimes we always have this interesting bit whereby you have the bad habits and the good habits. But for the bad habits is you feel like it's so hard to be able to adopt what we call the good habits. But why is that the case? So I think that's where the next chapter is being anchored on, and he goes on to say why it's so easy to repeat bad habits and so hard to form good ones. So few things that can have a more powerful impact on your life than improving your daily habits. And yet, this is right way or what it's the next year, you'll be doing the same thing rather than doing something better. It often feels difficult to keep good habits going for more than a few days, even if with sincere effort. The occasional burst of motivation, habits like exercise, meditations, journaling, cooking, or even something reasonable for day to day becomes a big hassle. However, once your habits are established, they seem to stick around forever, especially the unwanted ones. Despite our best intentions, unhealthy habits such as eating junk food, watching too much television, procrastination, and even smoking can feel impossible to break. So it's interesting, and so thank you so much, Anonymous. It's very interesting. Someone is saying to so many books and the party tactics at work. It's a very interesting. Oh my God! I feel today I'm going to have a big habit, a big challenge, because at one point I'm literally forgetting to check on the questions. Most of the people are coming at YT, but I'm very fixated on TikTok at the moment. So why is it so that if you start, if you want to start with a very new habit, it's very hard to be able to adopt that into our system. But if you are to stick with the wrong habits, it's easier, whatever it is. And remember, I say for me, I don't define what is a good habit or what's a bad habit. Obviously, what you need to know by now is a good habit most likely has to be what makes you better as a person, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as anything that you are or anything that you want to become. While the vice versa is what makes you not to be better at what you do or who you are, then that's what has a negative effect. So why is it so that it's so challenging to form or to adapt the new habit as opposed to continuing the bad habit, because they seem to come seamlessly into our lives. So he goes on to explain the first mistake and what possibly we get it wrong and how we can go about it. And he says, changing our habit is challenging for two reasons. And the reason number one is we try to change the wrong thing, while reason number two is we try to change our habits in the wrong way. So you can imagine, on one way, you're trying to change the wrong thing, while on the second way is you're trying to change the wrong habit. So in this chapter, he wants to address the first point, whereby he'll be able to answer the second one. And he goes on to say our first mistake is what we try to change the wrong thing. To understand, I mean, consider there are three levels at which change can occur. You can imagine them like a layers of onion. Obviously, by now, everybody has know what a bulb onion is. And a bulb onion has different layers. So if you're a lady and most of the times you cook, thank you so much, Anonymous, for the love. And thank you so much for guys who are popping up questions. So if you have a bulb onion, you can always, if you slice it, you can always see the different layers. So in this particular case, James is focusing on the outer layer is what we call the outcomes. When you go to the inner layer is what we call the processes. And the most inside layer is what we call the identity. So he says the first layer is changing your outcomes. So this level is concerned with changing your results. For example, my result, which we were talking recently when I started to work out, has got to lose weight or to be in better shape. Someone else's result might be publishing a book or winning a championship. Most of us, we do support EPL. I mean, my team, Manchester United, we are getting hammered every often. But if you ask the top management, like on the hierarchy, what's the goal of any EPL or any team is to win the championship. But for every one of us in this stream, we definitely have a different result which we wanted maybe when the year started, we wanted to achieve. So that's different. And that's where the first outer level is. But when you go inside, which is the second layer, is changing the process. And he says this level is concerned with changing your habits and system, implementing a new routine, such as if, for example, me, I want to be fit, then I'll either have to do go to the gym or even start calisthenics. That is whereby I get to work out at home or even do running. And lastly, and this is the most deepest, he says, the third layer and the deepest layer is changing your identity. So this is level concerned with changing your beliefs, your worldview, your self-image, your judgments about yourself, other people, or what you do. It's quite interesting, and I just want to know in this chapter, how do we get to peel this onion? And I'll also, something else interesting is if you have read this book, I'd love to read your insight. I'd love to see what you think and what are your thoughts about going with the three layers and where do you get to start. And he talks about that many people begin the process of changing their habits by focusing on what they want to achieve. This leads us to the outcome-based habits. The alternative is to build the identity-based habits. With this approach, we start by focusing who we wish to become. This is interesting. This is very interesting. Because even if someone asked me, I would have said, before you do something, and this is a conversation we are having with the manager next door, very good mentor and supporter for Afrifama. And I keep saying, without him, we wouldn't be here. And we were having a conversation about the young people when it comes to entrepreneurship, because that's what we really tend to champion a lot in this building. And so apparently there was supposed to be a training for entrepreneurship on, I think, this week on Tuesday, but I've not been in the office for the last 4 days. And then he says only a handful of people showed up, despite them and the trainers communicating the need for it. And then we got to ask ourselves, what could be the problem? And he ended up by saying it got to be with identity. If these young people they are trying to champion towards entrepreneurship, they have to adopt it, then it has first to come from themselves. And this is also boils down, I mentioned last week I was in Garsen, that is in Tana River County, and we were doing an entrepreneurship training. And I remember in the first thing on the manual drafted by Capstar, it had to do with identity for you as an entrepreneur, because if it doesn't come from inside yourself, then no matter what you do, no matter what the effort you're going to put in, it's going to be almost impossible. So thank you so much, guys, for the love. And it's very interesting. I got to say this often when you're on TikTok. And for the YT stream, it's always interesting to see people pop up in and get to show their support. So let's get to see what is it in chapter 2. And as I say, I've not read this book. I'm just reviewing it because now this is my last hour at the office. So, and I've got to review it with you guys. So don't get bored. And also don't have a lot of expectation. Trust me, this is why I did not want to read this book in earlier on. It was also interesting for me to read it right now. So I can be able now to have this kind of interesting conversation as a first timer. But I promise we got to see through it and see, for example, what these topics has got to do. And the end game, obviously, is to adopt some of these principles and get to use them in our own daily life. For example, for me as an entrepreneur, why I'm so interested with Atomic Habits is because I say this year have been very tough. But then we want to see, when you get to review your year, then you've got to ask yourself, what are some of have been the failing points? And as you start a new year, where do you start or where can you get to improve? But this is the gist. We said if you want to achieve what you call as a success, and we say success is different from what you think and what I think, because we have different expectations. It cannot just come as a whole, you expect overnight success. I'm in business, and I can tell you for a fact, before even we make our first dime, sometimes it takes even months to be able to say that. And this is why James is putting it in a way unless we got to adopt these small decisions, which he calls them atomic habits, and we get to adopt them in a systematic way for over a long period of time. That is only when we get to see the results. So that's why for me it's very interesting, because I get to experience this, and I'm also interested to make my life better. And I keep saying this at YT. For most people at the TikTok, I don't do TikToks. This is my first, or rather my second experience. At YT, I keep saying, because this is where we started our streaming 2 years ago. When we share our journeys, it's not because we have figured it out. We still, ourselves, we have a lot of questions. And is also the other factor is we have not made it. So one is not that we are successful, no. It's simply because we see ourselves, just like you guys or anyone else, trying to find what they call success. So back to this interesting read, and he is saying, and this is whereby he's going to start. He's starting with identity-based habits. James says, Imagine two people resisting a cigarette when offered a smoke. The first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." It sounds like a reasonable response, but this person still believe they are a smoker who is trying something else. They are hoping their behavior will change while around the same period. The second person declined by saying, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." It's a small difference, but this assessment signals a shift in identity. Smoking was part of their former life, not their current one. They no longer identify as someone who smokes. Rather interesting case study. And I've seen Nigerian. Thank you so much. You're one of the people I've always looked up to. I'm so sorry. Yesterday I missed the prayers. I slept early, but I'm grateful for the kind of divinity that you have literally offered us, some of us entrepreneurs. We've had a very rough year, so it's so good to see our mom here. She is a spiritual leader, and thank you so much. It's good to see you here. And thank you so much, Anita, for Anonymous, for engaging with her. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, definitely. On Sunday, I will definitely attend. This is something interesting. I'm not a very spiritual person, but my mom is a very spiritual person. I grew up in church, and these guys, I'm deviating a little bit on the habits. But it's not actually deviating because if you think about it, since last year I've been saying there is a new concept which also has been coming up in the business world, that is in entrepreneurship. Most of you guys from YT know me from. It's what we call the kingdom leadership into entrepreneurship, because for a very long time, most of us were not like 100% or very spiritual, but we are entrepreneurs or leaders. We have always neglected that aspect of kingdom leadership. And something I kept saying myself, you know what? I think the fact that I'm not very spiritual is something I need to work on. So every year on, I've been saying, oh my God, I need to go back to church. But every year on, I don't. Despite the fact that I come from a very spiritual home. So it's also a very good habit when you come to think about it, because you're like, okay, based on the decision I'm going to choose, and some of it was actually to join Nigerian, her online church. It's for me first to connect with the church, and ultimately try to just walk around it and see how I'll grow maybe spiritually, get to know a few things. And this is basically what we are talking about. So yeah. So if you have read this book by James Matt, or if you have a few chapters ahead, let me know what you think. Or if you have any question, we can definitely go through. So before I deviated, we mentioned about two people. One is they are all trying to quit smoking, and one of them says, when asked or being offered a cigarette, he says, "No, I'm trying to quit." Well, the response is good. It sounds quite reasonable. But for the next person, when being offered, he declines and says, "No, thanks, I'm not a smoker." And that's why you can be able to see the aspect of identity. The first person identified themselves as a smoker who are still working on it, but the second person, despite the fact that they have been smoking for their entire life, they're like, no, thank you, I'm no longer a smoker. And this is why James goes on to say, most people don't even consider identity change when they set out to improve. They just think, I want to be skinny, which ideally is the outcome, and the outcome is what we call our goal, or what we consider the success, why we are doing this. And they say, and if I stick to this diet, then I'll be skinny. Now, the dieting part is what he's terming as the process. So they set goals and determine the action they should take to achieve those goals without considering their beliefs that drive their action. They never shift the way they look at themselves, and they don't realize that their old identity can sabotage their new plans. It's interesting. So today you wake up and you assume, okay, for me, for example, I'll use the case for Afrifama. And I just say, I want to be successful. I want to hit this certain milestone with my company. But I'll try to possibly do what in the first outcome is. I'll tend to adopt maybe new systems, which I think maybe is accounting, maybe is the book, maybe is the new marketing strategies. And I'll feel if I do A, B, C, D, then that's what is going to make my company successful. It's very interesting when now James says we are so obsessed about the outcome and the process, but rarely do we like pause to ask, for example, the thoughts. And this is where do these thoughts stem from? The thought of us, why are we changing? Why do I want Afrifama to change? Why do I want Afrifama to succeed? And while at this, the why, it's a very new concept and reminds me like a week ago where I was in a call with one of our investors. And one thing that keeps coming up is he keeps saying, the reason why I'm doing this and this is because of your why. So even if you came to me and said you want Afrifama to be successful, you want to hit the milestone A, and then you tell us we are going to adopt new accounting systems, new marketing strategy, you're going to hire the best people. As an investor, if I don't understand why Afrifama exists, I'm never going to invest a dime of my money into your startup. And it's a very interesting perspective, because when you think about it, that these people, these individuals, they are not really interested on what you do, how you do it. They're actually interested on why do you do it? Why does it matter? And this is what I think I'll just connect it back with what James is trying to say. Other than the systems, other than the final goals, we should try first to examine why. And this is why he says, behind every system of actions are systems of beliefs. The system of democracy is founded on belief like freedom, majority rule, social equality. The system of a dictatorship has a very different set of beliefs like absolute authority and strict obedience. You can imagine many ways to try to get more people to vote in a democracy. But such behavior change would never get off grounds of dictatorship. That's not the identity of the system. Voting is a behavior that is impossible under certain sets of it's interesting when you think about it. And as I say, having a little bit of difficulty because I'm streaming today at two platforms at the same time. So if I don't get to see your comment or I come to you back on, forgive me, but I will try. So let me get to say, Anonymous, you're saying, true wealth start by God giving us wisdom, ideas, and direction. Absolutely, I believe. It's good to see you, Njoro. I've not forgotten with your friend. I hope we'll still come back to that conversations we are having on last weekend on the innovation aspect. And if you've read this book, please let me know what you think for the same. So at YT, in case you're joining us for the first time, we are reviewing this amazing book by James, and it's on atomic habits. And we've been reading it. So we have not like pre-read before. We are reading it for the first time. The reason behind it is, as I said earlier on, is for most part of this year, I felt like we've been challenged as a company, as an entrepreneur, or as a young aspiring leader. And one of the ways I've been saying is I want to see how can I improve on different aspects of my life. So eventually, I will ultimately achieve what I term as my success or the goals that I've set. And reading books is one of the things that I've set my eyes on because I believe most insights, we don't really need to go through the whole journey ourselves to be able to figure out something. Sometimes most of the things I've done, or some of the things I've come to know, they're actually through the books. And I feel my reading books are a bit different because I tend to focus on entrepreneurship reads more than maybe 60, 70%. Then I also focus on personal development, maybe 20 or something close to that. And of course, I think we should put spiritual books into that. Yeah, it's something. I was just talking this to my girl the other day, and I was introducing her to the Bible. And I cannot believe I did that. I'm still not yet perfect when it comes to reading spiritual books, but I find them spiritually nourishing. And this is what we are still saying: is those the 1% margins? Because I'm interested on knowing, for example, if I want to get to know or to be able to achieve what I term as my success, how do I get to do this? Because again, I feel like I haven't achieved any success. So that's why we are reviewing this book. And it was also a good recommendation from a very good friend of mine. Why not? So if you have any question, any insight, please leave it below. I'll be able to come and flip through. The same case at YT, I know I feel to be on the both edges, but trust me, the first day is the learning day, but possibly in the live stream number, maybe live stream number 5, I'll be very good. And I'm also tired because I started my day at around 8, not 8, at 2 p.m., 2 a.m. this morning. So I should be getting some sleep at around maybe late afternoon. So I know someone is wondering, why are you reading a book? So it's like a pattern. Every day I'm trying before my day ends to get into this. And it's amazing to have you into this stream. And also not forgetting, we've been chasing this goal at YT. And this is why I feel I've been streaming so much since last week. But at least we have like less than 32 people to go before we reach our goal for the year. And then maybe I'll stop streaming and go back to normalcy. But it's also interesting. So back to the read, he says, the ultimate form of intrinsic motivation is when a habit becomes part of your identity. It's one thing to say, I am the type of a person who wants this. It's something very different to say, I am the type of a person who is this. Very interesting. On one side, you'd say, I want this. On the other side, you say, I am this. You belong. And it just reminds me of, as I say, earlier this morning, I was in a conversation with a very amazing mentor and supporter for Afrifama. And I gave him an example whereby we say, for most of the trainings whereby most of entrepreneurs, especially the young entrepreneurs, the one I mentioned, like in Garrison, the reason why less than 10% tends to succeed as compared to 100 is because for most of the trainings being done is, I was referring a thing called generalism, whereby most of us, maybe mentors, business developers, we don't tend to look what we call our TNs. These are the target market. We don't get to look at their demographic to see if they really suit what we are looking for. And lastly is we don't get to all administer some of the tests being referred. I know in YT for the longest I've been streaming on what we call GYB. This is grow your own business, or SYB, start and improve your business. So most of the time, those are the streams I've been talking about. But if you go to those trainings, the first thing, even before someone trains you or mentors you, is you need to do an assessment tool which determines your readiness for you to be an entrepreneur. And I was telling him that the reason why that's still what they call the success rate is so low is because most of these people, they have not yet accepted their identity to be entrepreneurs. It's like when you go to the forest, if you show the bananas to the monkey, the bananas will follow you simply because they are just interested to get the bananas, and that's all. We all know monkey loves bananas. It's just a crazy analogy to mention that before even you show people the bananas, they should be able first to determine if what stems into them. And the case for these young entrepreneurs is they need to own it. They need first to test themselves, the willingness, the readiness. And the same thing, and this is what James is calling them, the ultimate form of intrinsic motivation. It just stems from inside. If it doesn't stem, then it's almost impossible. And this is why we are seeing, even if you do dozens of training for people on entrepreneurship, unless they own it. I gave a good example. Personally, before, for 2 or 3 years, I've been in entrepreneurship full time. The reason why I've been able, for example, to prevail despite so many challenges we have faced as a company, and it's simply because my identity when I joined or when I came in was that of an entrepreneur. From the very first day, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and everything I've done, going to school, I remember when I was choosing entrepreneurship, everyone was like, why would you choose this? Why do you want to go to study entrepreneurship for 4 years? But then I'll tell them, it's because I want to learn how to do businesses. I want to learn how to develop ideas. And for very even those years, I knew. So even if all the challenges that have come to my business, that's why it's been so easier for someone like me. And then I ended up telling him, if someone else was put into my place and they didn't have a proper identity of who they are, for example, in this category, into entrepreneurship, I doubt anyone would survive for 2 months, because driving an enterprise is crazy. So he goes on to say, the more pride you have in a particular aspect of your identity, the more motivated you will to maintain the habits associated with it. If you are proud of your hair looks, you will develop all sorts of habits to care for, maintain it. If you are proud of the size of your biceps, again, biceps. And I keep saying my girl is very proud of those ones because I am very proud of those ones. So what do? You'll make sure that you never skip an upper body workout. If you're proud of your scars of your knee, you'll be more likely to spend hours knitting each week. Once your pride gets involved, you'll fight tooth and nail to maintain your habits. You remember when we started this stream by saying, why is it so hard to maintain or to start good habits as compared to the bad habits? And we said for the bad habits, there are the negative elements which affect our lives in a negative way. Well, the good ones are those that contribute positively. You can be able to see based on what we say. It's simply because most of us, we tend to lack pride into them. Because if we have the pride, and this is pride comes with the ownership, this is what we will be able to do. Because in my case, I keep on using entrepreneurship because that's one thing that I love so much. So due to the fact that I love entrepreneurship so much, and due to the fact I associate myself and I see the future of myself in today's divinity, then I am prepared to do whatever it takes. I mean, I've sacrificed my life to build something. Tell me something which is more crazy than that. I used to work in the corporate world for 2 years or 3 years, and this is why I had to save enough money to start this business. Trust me, for you to quit your 5 or 6 figure job to pursue a dream, there's nothing more crazy than that. But if you have the pride, if you have the ownership, if you have the identity, that's why for me it's been so easy that even if I fail, I always stay on and fight until at the last moment we always find the miracle of a lifetime, which is what actually happened to a business, which is again talk in the future. So it's quite interesting, and I see a question at YT. Someone is saying, "Why is it so hard to maintain good habits?" It's just, I hope I've answered with that. It's simply because we don't have any form of ownership. We don't have any form of identity. Because remember when we said, if you want to do something, if you want to achieve something, you have, before even you think about how you're going to achieve that, the system you're going to use, you have to ask yourself, why? Why do you want to achieve that? You have to go deeper. And that's why you saw what we're looking at is the 3 layers. And we are starting with the inner one, which is identity, because if you bypass that, then no matter what you do, it becomes so hard. And this intrinsic understanding, the ownership, the identity, is what he's calling pride. The moment you have pride in what you do, we've given a good example. For anyone who is working out, this is for the gym bros. If you go to any gym, everybody is always proud of their upper bodies, possibly their chest, their biceps. So to be able to maintain that, they will never skip chest day in any way. The same case for ladies. If you love your hair and you believe this is what you like, there are some ladies who love long hair or short hair, depending. You are going to do anything possible, and these are the processes you're going to take care of it until it achieves that growth. And for the gym bros is until you get that pump, you'll continue going to the gym every week, and you're always looking for that. And that's why he ended up by saying, once your pride gets involved, you fight tooth and nail to maintain your habits. I hope you have the answer. That was on Mr. She's asked at YT for the same. And thank you so much for the support. So let me see what you guys are saying on TikTok. Amen. Thank you so much, Miss Nassarian. Really appreciate and everyone joining the stream. Really appreciate. So last bit on this is whereby he says the true behavior change is identity change. You might change. You might start habit because of motivation, but the only reason you'll stick with one is that it becomes part of your identity. Anyone can convince themselves to visit the gym or eat healthy once or twice, but if you don't shift the beliefs behind the behavior, then it's hard to stick with long-term changes. Improvements are only temporary until they become part of you. And that's a very, very classic case of identity. So the goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to learn an instrument. The goal is to become a musician. So you can see on this true variation is on every aspect is if you are saying the goal, for example, is just to read this book, then we will be done. And once we are done, then what happens? But if the goal for me is to become a reader, like I said, when I was young, I used to spend almost half of my time in the local library. And now it's my goal to reinstate that old habit which greatly influenced the person I became. And I feel there's a need for that. Then I'll not just be fixated on finishing this book, because one day you'll wake up and you feel like you don't want to read. If the goal is just to finish a marathon, then and you don't enjoy running or you don't want to be part of it, then after you do your first K, then you'll be like, this is not for me. And it's the same case on fitness. Recently, I mentioned I started to do calisthenics back at home because this has been a very terrible year. I've not been working out at the gym for the last 3 months. So until recently, when I came across one of the creators, and I kept saying, I need to get back to the gym because my weight is becoming terrible. I feel unfit. But then there were so many things which were holding me back. And then one day I saw someone practicing, and they were actually, it's very funny, and that's why I keep saying the power of social media. So they'll come every day at 10 p.m. and for them, they'll do upper body workouts and a bit of squats. So when I started, that's a month ago, it was so hard because remember, for 3 months I've not worked out. It was painful. And I swear I would have stopped working out the next day. But you see, the goal was not to do the push-up or to just do what we call the sit-ups or the squats. The goal is to become fit. The goal is to eventually cut down my weight and again, just be like in a gym bro. So every day, every week, I've seen myself doing more push-ups, doing more squats. When we were barely doing less than 20, at a good day, we are doing close to 150 after 1 hour. And that's become part of me. The reason why it's now part of my life is because I can identify myself as someone who wants to be fit, as someone who is on their journey. So that's why James is saying here, your behaviors are usually the reflection of identity. What you do is an indication of the type of a person you believe you are, either consciously or non-consciously. So, and this is a very interesting book read when you say what you believe, whether you knowingly or unknowingly. Because one of the other book, I think I should start reading it in the next maybe 3 weeks from now, depending on how fast I finish this one. Not even starting because I was reading it this morning. It's Thinking Fast and Slow. And one of the things they said is the art of thinking. Sometimes you do something without even yourself knowing you're doing it. It's based on the intuition. And I remember the author, he said there was this case of the firefighters. So they had gone to fight fire, and then they thought the fire was inside a kitchen. But once they went in, he don't remember thinking of telling the team, let's go out. But he said, let's go out. He heard himself say that. And after they left with the team, the whole building collapsed because, surprisingly, the fire was not coming from the kitchen. It was coming from underground. So that is the intuition. It's based on the senses. And again, that's why I'm trying to connect it here with what the atomic habits and what this author is trying to say, that behaviors usually are reflections of your identity. And these identities, again, is indication of the type of a person you believe you are, either consciously or unconsciously. And this is whether you know it or when you don't even know it. And yeah, I hope by January we can be able to review that book, because I also thought it's also a very good book as well. So, like all aspects of habit formation, this too is a double-edged sword. When working for you, identity change can be powerful source of self-improvement. When working against you, so identity can be a curse. Once you have adopted an identity, it can be easy to let your allegiance to its impact on your ability to change. Many people walk through life in cognitive slumber, blindly following the norms attached to their identity. Sometimes that's where you get to hear someone say, I'm terrible in direction. I'm not a morning person. I am bad with remembering people's names. I'm actually a culprit for this. I'm always late. I'm not good with technology. I'm horrible at math. And now, obviously, we have 1,000+ of variation. So when you have repeated a story to yourself for years, it's easy to slide into these mental growths and accept them as a fact. In time, you begin to resist certain action because that's not who I am. There is internal pressure to maintain your self-image and behave in a way. So it's rather interesting. It's rather interesting. And thank you. Someone is saying it's so hot. This is the thing about the coastal region. You can believe it's 12 and it's already dripping even when the fans are on. Thank you so much, Saleh, for the love. I really hope your poultry farm is really coming along well. And Anonymous is saying, I'm not a morning person. So surprisingly, that is the variation which you have fed yourself for over the years. So what it has happened to your logic is you've come to accept that variation. And ultimately, that has affected you to believe and to become that. So that's why James is saying the more deeply a thought or action is tied to identity, the more difficult to change it. It can feel comfortable to believe that your culture, to believe what your culture believes, and this again stems from the group identity, or to do what uphold your self-image, this personal identity. Even if it's wrong, the biggest barrier to a positive change at any level, and this is either individual, team, or society, is identity conflict. So good habits can make rational sense, but if they conflict with your identity, you will fail to put them into action. So I hope again, when we are talking about this kind of variations, they are just all based on what we feed ourselves from time to time or for a long period of time. And what this does is it develops our intuitions. And before you realize it, we have a certain way of living. And woe unto us if it's not a good way to build ourselves, because not all variations are good variations that makes us. And we keep saying that's why we need to self-examine that. So lastly, and I'll say lastly because I don't want to go through all this read again because I might get a copyright strike. It's like trying. It's like trying, but I'm just commentating on it. So he says, for example, who is the type of a person who could write a book? It's probably someone who is consistent and reliable. Now, your focus shift from writing a book that is outcome based to being the type of person who is consistent and reliable, which is again, we are saying identity based. So he was trying to think of, for example, you ask yourself, who for others, these are guys who write books time to time. Even personally, on my media, I've always loved to pen down my thoughts for the years. And someone will say, "You a good author. You know how to hook people." And then someone will say, "I'm a terrible author." So what's the distance between the two? There's one person who believes uh, they have what it takes to write, but there's also someone based on the identity they feel they're not good at. And then someone else says, for example, if person B, this is someone who thinks they're not good at writing or authoring anything. They go to person A who thinks or being told they're other, ask them, what does it take to be an author? So ideally, the author, this kind of person will say, you definitely need to be maybe consistent and reliable with your ideas. So what that does is, if you are that type B person who wants to be an author or to write, then you'll not just now try to focus your thoughts or your strengths just to write the book. The first aspect for you will be focusing on you being reliable, on you being consistent with ideas. And ultimately, if you go to the now there's more, you go from outcome based to identity based, it's way better because over the time you realize you actually have acquired skills and you become a better author. It's rather interesting books, and I can't wait to read this book. It's very interesting. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know at YT. Let me know what you guys think. At least I can take a breather now. And thank you so much, Anonymous, for the love and everyone in this live. I'm so sorry I couldn't be able to acknowledge when you're joining in. As I had mentioned earlier, the challenge is to, when you're maintaining two stream, is you are on this side and you're on this side. But thank you so much. I see you guys. Sheila, thank you for joining. And Moses, thank you for joining the stream. Anyone who has read this book, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. This is just my first reaction. I'm literally reading this book when we are on this stream. All right, let me know what you guys think. James goes on to say, once you have a handle on the type of a person you want to be, you can begin taking smaller steps to reinforce your identity, to reinforce your desired identity. He says, I have a friend who has lost over 100 pounds by asking herself, what would a healthy person do all day long? She would use this question as a guide. What would a healthy person, would a healthy person walk or take a cab? Would a healthy person order a burrito or a salad? She figured it, if she acted like a healthy person long enough, eventually she would become that person, and she was right. This reminds me a very, I'll not call it interesting. It's a very, I don't know, I don't want to use the word proverbial. That terms whereby people say fake it until you make it, whereby if you think And it's true because I've also had from a gentleman I really admire, and this happens to be one of our angel investors. I remember the first time he visited, he told us with my co-founder, um, what is that you've always wanted? Imagine it. Uh, if is living this certain of a life. I used to think it's a bullshit back then, but over the years, I've come to learn it's not a bullshit. If you imagine yourself going to this fancy restaurant, having dinner there, or having your companion go there, then just take a few hundred, few thousand shillings, even if it's not a lot, and treat yourself for one in a lifetime experience. Or even if you cannot afford it, go and buy water, which is the cheapest commodity. And then he end up by saying, go buy water, even if it's the most expensive water you'll ever drink. Because if you go for a fancy restaurant, trust me, if we buy the value of what we perceive as water, maybe in the streets of Kenya is 30 shillings or even 50 shillings. But I can assure you, if you go and drink, I'd love, I have forgotten most of these brands. They're very fancy, but for still water, you possibly pay maybe 5 or 6 hundred. He says, go and experience it. He even said, you guys want to be maybe top 40 under 40, or do you want to be in Forbes? Then just take your picture and create it into one of those Forbes magazine and put it there. For me, my favorite one have always been how we made it in Africa. So even most of the times, I remember one of my biggest story I ever did this year was back. You'll say, just imagine it and feel it or act like it. And eventually, over the time, it's kind of like triggers your brain into something. And this is what even in this book, Atomic Habits, the author is saying one of the person who happens to be his friend wanted to be healthy and would often ask before she made any decision, she would ask himself, would a healthy person do this? Would a healthy person take this decision? And ultimately, she found that she ended up acting like a healthy person. So it's the same case. And he says the concept of identity-based habit is our first introduction to another key theme of this book. And this is why the focus should always be on becoming that type of a person, not getting a particular outcome. Because if we focus on a particular outcome, then along the way, because it's definitely going to be very hard, we would have lost it. So wow, it's very interesting. And thank you so much, guys, for joining in the stream. And I know my say the book shows that consistency beats intensity every time. Definitely 100%. And good to see you, Caliph. Caliph used to be my very good mate at Moi. Happy to see you that you're doing well outside. Very interesting. Wow. Let me say. We're almost done. We're almost done because I just wanted to be live for only 1 hour. So the end of the day, he says, the real reason habits matter. Identity changes is the North Star of habit change. The remainder of this book, there obviously goes on to say how he's going to provide step by step, which can actually help you build better habits for yourself, your family, your team, your company, and everywhere else you wish. But the truth question is, are you becoming the type of a person you want to become? The first step is not what or how, but who. You need, and I repeat again, you need to know who you want to be. Otherwise, your quest for change is like a boat without a rudder. And that's why we are starting here. It's interesting, very interesting. It's something you definitely want to sink in. The first thing is not the process, it's not the system, but you. And you, that's what represent as what we call as identity. Good to see you, Mutoni Tarzan. And thank you so much for joining the stream. So you have the power to change your beliefs about yourself. Your identity is not set in stone. You have the choice in every moment. Then you can choose the identity you want to reinforce today with the habit you choose today. And this brings us to the deeper purpose of this book. That's why the reason why habits matter. He goes on to say, building better habits, building better habits isn't about littering your day with life hacks. It's not about flossing one tooth each night or taking one cold shower each morning or wearing the same outfit each day. It's not about achieving external measures of success like earning more money, losing weight, reducing stress. Habit can help you achieve all these things, but fundamentally, they are not about having something. They are about becoming someone. And when we talk about becoming someone, one of my good friends, and I keep joking when we are in conversation, her name is Rina. She goes by the name Becoming Rina. And most of the time she don't understand why I keep on making a joke about the aspect of becoming, because for me I felt it stems down inside to this person. They get to identify who they are, how they want to be, and who they want to be. And that's why they ended up calling themselves becoming this. And at the end of the day, it's not about the final goal, but rather who do you end up becoming in achieving. So ultimately, James says your habits matters because they can help you become the type of a person you wish to be. They are the channel through which you develop your deepest belief about yourself. So quite literally, you become your habits. So that's chapter 2. It's very interesting, and you're definitely saying this is Mr. That the book shows consistency, and yeah, I think I went through that. It's very interesting that on the second chapter, it's more about identifying, it's more about the identity, and the focus shifts now from the outcome itself to who you should be first. Because without becoming that, then it becomes hard. And I remember in chapter 1, we looked in a case scenario whereby we said it's going to be hard. And I think I should just go back to chapter 1. I think my mouse is actually running out of power. Just a minute, guys. Let me know what you think. And I'm super tired. I should be definitely ending the stream in the next 15 minutes. So let me know your questions, and for everyone who have joined, thank you so much. We were reviewing a book by James Smart. It's called Atomic Habits, and I just wanted to dash back to something I remember he says in chapter 1, because I needed to go to word by word. Oh my God, I can't be able to find that quote. It's something we talked about the plateau, whereby he had mentioned something that when we adopt these habits, which we call them good habits or anything that's going to help us, it's not going to be easy because you're not going to get the result the next day. And he was talking about the plateau. So, and this is why I've actually found it. He says, similarly, habits often appear to make no difference until you cross a critical threshold and unlock a new level of performance. So, in the early and middle stages of any quest, there is often what we call a valley of disappointment. And this is whereby you expect to make good progress in a linear fashion, and it's frustrating how ineffective changes can seem during the first days, weeks, or even months. It doesn't feel like you're going anywhere. It's the hallmark of any compounding process. And the most outcomes are delayed. And this is whereby it's so critical when you first work on the identity aspect. Because if you don't have that identity aspect with you, if you don't work on the who and the why aspect, then the how becomes irrelevant. Because most of the time, if you don't know the why and the who, then along the way, you will lose the focus and becomes hard for you to achieve what you call or any goal that you've set. So it's a very interesting read. And I don't know, possibly on Saturdays we can look on chapter 3, but I'll try to read ahead at least this time. So at least I can do more of commentary than going through. So thank you so much, Chamanga, for joining. I've seen you on our YT program. I mean, that is the YouTube. Thank you so much. And I've also seen you right here. So if you got any question, you can ask now. And poleni sana, najua nimetumia kizungu mingi, but it's so hard to translate Kiingereza if you're in a process of reading. And this is because also most of my guys who have supported like Afrifama channel and YouTube, we tend to have a lot of guys from outside. So for the local guys, for Kenyans, I hope you guys understand. It's simply, trust me, I love speaking Swahili, and I'm actually in the Swahili nation. But if I was to use Swahili in my stream, nitapoteza wasee wengi, especially from the diaspora. So if you have any question, then you can ask me. I'll be around. And I'll also be reviewing how to build better habits in 4 simple steps. I'm interested to know, how do you do that? That's actually basically chapter 3. I'm interested. Meanwhile, I'll be looking at you guys. Thank you so much. I've seen some familiar faces. Motoni, you're one of my good friends at Facebook. I don't know where you went. It's good to see you here again. Chamanga, as I said, you're one of the few people I've also mentored when I used to consult for entrepreneurship. So it's good to see you here. And I hope, guys, this is making a lot of sense, because if it doesn't, then I'll feel terrible. Like, I'll feel terrible to try to share something with you and it doesn't have a value. Because deep inside myself, I keep saying this until one of my girls thinks I'm crazy. I keep saying the reason why I want to be an entrepreneur, it's not to make the money. It's because I just want to make a positive impact. And if you are to analyze the decisions I've made for so many years, they are all based on that. The money is part of it. And that's where comes the why. So even the reason why I'm trying to share this journey is one, it's one of my journey. I feel it's going to help me. And just like I keep saying on my stream, I'm not that kind of a creator or an entrepreneur who want to come back here 10 years or 5 years and say, hey, I'm now back. I want to give you what made me to be who I am. I'm rather, I'm this kind of a creator who adopt a weird way of communicating, whereby I share what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, and even sometimes without necessarily knowing its effect. So, like for this one, I feel it's something that's going to build me. And once in a while, we can share a good drink. Because I know in most of the streams we talk about business, entrepreneurship, ideas, ideation process, fundraising, but we don't get to focus on that 1%, which can ultimately make ourselves better. We don't get to talk on self improvement because, trust me, we really need it. So, yeah, I don't want to come back 5 years and say, hey, it's because of this and this that I'm like this. No, I just want to share it with you, and hopefully, together we can be able to achieve our respective goals or what we call as a success. As opposed, I mean, it's still good, but I feel for me to come back in 10 years, most of us will have been old. For now, you have an opportunity to impact someone else's life while you yourself, you're also trying to make your life, right? I hope this makes a lot of sense. And yeah, so that's why I'm doing this. Let me see what chapter 3 says. I'll just do 1 or 2 pages. Because I think my day is actually done. I was supposed to be done by 1, but I'm done. So let me know where you guys watching from. What do you think? So what does chapter 3 says? Joy, good to see you. Thank you for joining. How to build better habits in possible steps. In 1988, we go. Uh, in 1898, a psychologist named Edward conducted an experiment that would lay foundation for understanding how habits form and rule the kind of behavior. What did he do? He would place each cat inside a device known as a puzzle box. The box was designed so that the cat could escape through the door by some simple acts, such as pulling the loop of the cord, pressing a lever, or stepping on a platform. For example, one box contained a lever that, when pressed, would open a door on the other side of the box. So he goes on to say, most cats wanted to escape as soon they were placed inside the box. They would poke their nose into the corners, stick their paws through the openings, and claw at loose objects. After a few minutes of exploration, the cats would happen to press the magical lever. The door would open and they would escape. So these scientists tracked the behavior of each cat across many trials. In the beginning, the animals move around the box at random, but as soon as the lever had been pressed, the door opened. The process of learning began. So over the time, each cat learned to associate action of pressing the lever with the reward of escaping the box and getting the food. So after 20 or 30 trials, this behavior became so automatic and habitual that the cat could escape within a few seconds. This is very interesting. And he goes on to say, Thorndike noted that a cat 12 took the following time to perform the act. At first, 160 seconds, then 30 seconds, then from 30, 60, all the way to 6 seconds. And he says, during the first 3 trials, the cat escaped an average of 1.5 minutes. During 3 trials, it escaped in an average of 6.3 seconds. Very interesting. Who would have thought that you'd actually do a scientific experiment on the cats? And he says, from these studies, Thorndike described the learning process by stating, behaviors followed by satisfying consequences tend to be repeated, and those that produce unpleasant consequences are likely are less likely to be repeated. His work provides a perfect starting point for discussing how habit form in our own lives. It also provides the answer to some fundamental questions like what are habits and why does a brain bother building them at all? It's very interesting that for creatures such as cats, that they would actually learn uh, some sophistication because I mean, opening a level it shows some level of reasoning. So at first, uh, it was hard, but then over the time, then they have been able to figure out how to do this. And because at the end of the day, they say there was a reward. So, and the reward was based on them escaping the box and getting to find the food. So, the very first minutes or the very first trials will take more time or more minutes in average for them to figure out this. But then towards the more the act was repeated, the lesser for them it took to figure out what they needed. And this is to place the lever and escape. So that's when then he asked, how or why does your brain build habits? Quite interesting. I'd love to know. Deborah, good to see you. Thank you for joining the stream. Let me know if you have read this book. And also at YT, good to see you, Mr. Festus. I keep saying you are one of the OGs for Afrifama, a very good mentor and supporter for our crusade, which we started almost 2 years. So thank you so much. And it's good to see you on the stream. I hope you've read the book. If not, let me know what you think or what are your thoughts. Where does habit stems from? How does the brain build on them? So good to see you, Joy, for joining the stream. So James, who happens to be author of this book, he goes on to say, a habit is a behavior that has been repeated enough time to become automatic. The process of habit formation begins with trial and error. Whenever you encounter a new situation in life, your brain has to make a decision. How do I respond to this? The first time you come across a problem, you are not sure how to solve it. Then, just like the cats here, you're just trying to figure things out to see which works out, which doesn't. So this is the process we call the analyzing process, is whereby you get to see each different situations, how to handle it, and the end outcome. And ultimately, this helps you to make conscious decisions on how about you are going to act. So this is actually a very good experience. This is actually a good one. He says, occasionally, like a cat placing a lever, you stumble across a solution. You're feeling anxious, and you discover that going for runs calms you down. You're mentally exhausted from long day of work, and you learn that playing video games relaxes you. You are exploring and exploring, and then bam, you come across the reward. That's the process of figuring out. And what will happen is the next time you feel tired, you'll not be start exploring different ways. You'd actually rather go back to that on particular process that you stumbled across that made you feel better or to feel relaxed. So it's very interesting. I'm just scrolling down. I really didn't want to read this chapter because I'm super tired. Um, Let me know what do you guys think. I'm going off the stream in the next 10 minutes, and I'd love to answer your question if you have any or your thoughts on the same. This is an interesting one. He says, as habits are created, the level of activity in the brain decreases. You learn to lock in on the cues that predict success and tune out everything else. When a similar situation arises in the future, that's what we say. You exactly know what to look for. And you no longer need to analyze every action or a situation. Your brain skips the process of trial and error and creates a mental rule. If this, then that. These cognitive scripts can be followed automatically whenever the situation is appropriate. It's very interesting. It's very saying the very first time, whether you're in business, whether you're in life, you have a problem. And most of the time, if it's your first time, your mind will be jumping from option A, B, all the way to Z until later on you'll have zeroed on maybe option D or maybe option S, which is depending on situations, works best for you. So the next time you come across this problem, your brain will cease to have its capacity, or you not tend to think more because already you registered this particular thought or line of thought and you have a way. It's just interesting to see how we arrive to solutions, to answers. Wow. And this is why he end up by saying, as soon your brain skips the process of trial and error and creates a mental rule. If this, then that, these cognitive scripts can be followed automatically whenever the situation is appropriate. Now, whenever you feel stressed, you get the itch to run. As soon as you walk the door from work, you grab a video game and start gaming. Because earlier on, you had encountered this and ultimately you figured out what cools you now. And that's what he's calling a habit. That's how we form a simple habit. So habits are mental shortcuts learned from experience. In a sense, a habit is just a memory of the steps you previously followed to solve that problem in the past. Whenever the conditions are right, you can draw on this memory and apply the same solution without even thinking about it. So the primary reason for the brain is to remember the past, is to be able to better predict that will work in the future. Interesting. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Thank you, Joy, for joining in. I'm actually done with today's stream. I'm super tired, guys. Super, super, super tired. I've been up since two. I've been up since 2 a.m. If you've been noticing my activity, I know I have this weird way of. Sometimes I can start like working very early on, like most people. But now the downfall is I cannot keep the whole day going on because you can see like my eye seems like someone who has been up the whole night, which is true. But that means by in the afternoon, it's like a habit or routine. Most of the days when I know I don't want to work during the daytime, then I work during the night, which is quite interesting. But it's not a very good habit, but for me it does work. So let me know, guys, what do you think? I'll be just here reviewing this. I don't want to read an entire script, otherwise you'll get bored in it. If I get something interesting, I will I'll let you guys know. Meanwhile, feel free to ask any question. And thank you so much, Mr. Thank you so much, Mr. Festus. Thank you so much, Doris, and everyone on TikTok stream from Anonymous for the love and for yeah, for popping in. I know for most people they're just wondering what's this, what's going on. So we're just reviewing a very interesting book called Atomic Habits. I'm actually looking at something they call the science of how habit work from cue, cravings, response, and reward. And it's very interesting that the more the reward is, the more easier, the less time it takes for you to form a habit. And you can see there are four processes which they are calling a pattern. They're saying this four-step pattern is the backbone of every habit, and your brain runs through this step in the same order of the time. So first, there is a cue. The cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. It's a bit of information that predicts the reward. Then it goes on to say your mind is continually analyzing your internal and external environment for hints of where the rewards are located. Because of the cue is the first indication, then you are close to a reward. It naturally leads to the craving. So it's very interesting again. Cravings are the second step, and they are the motivational force behind every habit. So without some level of motivation or desire, without craving a change, we have no reason to act. Then cravings, they say cravings differ from person to person because in theory, any piece of information could trigger craving. But in practice, people are not motivated by the same cues. For a gambler, the sound of machines. This reminds me of Aviator. I don't know how many guys used to play. And they used to have like that. We'll see on the infomercials that plane going up, and there's always that associated like a sound which was very distinct. So for any gambler, I bet that sound is what triggers them. But for someone who really gambles, if they hear that jings or chimes in the background noise, then those cues are meaningless to them. It's like most of us who watch football every weekend, EPL, they have this anthem. The moment you hear it, then it's like your mind is triggered. And then they say the next step is response. So the response is an actual habit you perform, which can take form of thought or an action. So whether a response occurs depends on how motivated you are and how much friction is associated with behavior, which is true. Um, we keep saying the reason, most of the times you hear people say about, what do you put it? I'm forgetting this name. Implementation. Why does implementation happen in some cases and doesn't? It's simply because the more someone is motivated to do something, the more they are motivated to implement a thought or an idea or something. But the less you're motivated, then the more you are likely to lag behind and not to take any action. It's quite interesting. And they say, finally, the response delivers a reward. So rewards are the end goal of every habit. Cues is about noticing the reward. Craving is about wanting the reward. Response is about obtaining the reward. And which is rewards because, I mean, for two purposes. One, satisfy ourselves, and then two, they teach us. It's very interesting. It's very interesting to review this book, but I'm also finding it is a little bit technical compared to most of the books that I've read in the past. I'm like, there are so many cases that I have to pause and think through them because I find most of the language used. I wouldn't say it's very easy, but it's not also not very hard, but it's just technical. So just interesting. That's interesting. Let me see how these work. And they're saying if a behavior is insufficient in any of the four stages, if a behavior is insufficient in any of the four stages, it will not become a habit. Eliminate the cue of your habit, eliminate the cue, and your habit will never start. Reduce the craving, and you won't experience enough motivation to act. Make the behavior difficult, and you won't be able to do it. And if the reward fails to satisfy your desire, then you'll have no reason to do it again in the future. So without these first three steps, a behavior will not occur. And without all four processes, then a behavior will not be repeated. It's a very interesting habit loop, which again is very interdependent of each other, thinking from the cue to the craving, the response to the reward, and vice versa. Because it's also interesting to note that you can actually go through the entire loop for the first time, but then if the very end of this loop, that is the reward, is not bigger enough, then there is less likely likelihood of you doing the same task again. So that's how they're affected. It's like a quadrant, and this is whereby the loop is divided in 4 quadrants. So it's a very good. And he says, in summary, the cue triggers craving, which motivates a response, which provides a reward, which satisfies a craving, and ultimately becomes associated with the cue. So together, these 4 steps form a neurological feedback: loop, cue, craving, response, reward. Cue. It's very interesting to see how it's going up and down. And if it's one of the quadrants is not in sync, then the rest don't matter. So he says, this is good. The brain is continuously scanning the environment, predicting what will happen next, trying different responses, learning from the result. The entire process is completed in a split second. We use it again and again without realizing everything that has been packed into the previous moment. So, and this is whereby there are 2 phases. So there is a problem phase, and this is very interesting because, as I said, I'm reading this for the first time, so I'm also trying to pause and understand. So in the problem phase, we have the cue and the craving, while on the solution phase, we have the response and reward. Oh, this is good. Because James is further saying that all behavior is driven by the desire to solve a problem. So sometimes the problem is what you notice something good and you want to obtain it. Sometimes the problem is that you experience pain and you want to relieve it. So either way, the purpose of a habit is to solve this good or bad problem. But now he says, and he's giving up a good example, and he says, imagine walking into a dark room, flipping on the light switch. You have performed this simple habit so many times that it occurs without thinking. You proceed through all the first steps. This is good. They urges you to strike without even thinking. So let's try to expound this, see what he's saying. So on the problem phase, this is where the cue. So your phone buzzes with a new text message. And then the craving is you want to learn the content of the message. That's a very classic. I think that's what happened to every one of us. So in the solution phase is whereby the response, you grab your phone and read the text. Then the reward, you satisfy your craving to read the message, and grabbing your phone becomes associated with the phone buzzing. That's good. Because after reading, then it's either you like what you've read or you dislike it. And if you like what you've read, then you anticipate the next buzz. So your reaction will be to answer that message, anticipating the reward. And ultimately, the whole loop of problem and solution will repeat itself. Wow. I think he really gives a good example. And even as a scenario two, he's talking about problem faced for the emails. And I believe every one of us like have emails. So Q is whereby you're answering emails. An email comes in. Then the craving is you begin to feel stressed and overwhelmed by the work. You want to feel in control. So the response is either you bite your nails or the what, which is the last bit is you satisfy your cravings to reduce the stress by biting your nails, which becomes associated with answering the email. Classic example. It's very classic. Let me know what you guys think. Very good. He says on, which is interesting, by the time we become adults, we really notice the habits that are becoming our lives. So most of us never give a second thought to the fact that we tie the same shoes first each morning or unplug the toaster after we each use. So I'll always change into comfortable clothes after getting home from work. After decades of mental programming, we ultimately slip into this pattern of thinking and acting. This is interesting. This is interesting. I'll just be around in case someone has a question or feedback. But for now, I'm just reacting based on what I'm thinking. Um, and it's a very good book. It's talking more about the four laws of behavior change. Definitely on Saturday, we'll definitely dive into it and get to understand what is this and how does that affect the group. And I mean, this is interesting. So this is a loop whereby he's saying how to create a good habit. So the first law, which is Q, make it obvious. And second law, cravings, make it attractive. Then the third law, response, make it easy. And then the fourth law, which is reward, make it satisfying. Is literally taking us back to that loop that we were in. Uh, and again, how interdependent the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward is. So, and the more you think about it, the more you actually realize, wow, this makes a lot of sense. Because if the cue is obvious, then there's no ambiguity involved, like big or something confusing. And in the second law, when you're talking about the craving, well, it's attractive. You'll be inclined to have a response because you want to get the reward. But before even you get the reward, then the response should not be hard. That's why they're saying make it easy. And then ultimately, the reward should be at all possession be satisfied. Because if it's not, we say this is a loop. You'll never go back to the same loop again. But if it's justifying, you will always, or it will be easier for you to create a good habit. And then he's also saying we can invert these laws to learn how to break a bad habit. And then he says inversion of the first law, Q, make it invisible. Then on the craving, make it unattractive. And then on the response, you make it difficult. And then on the fall, which is reward, you make it unsatisfying. Which was interesting because I remember when we started on chapter 2, it was all based on why is it so hard to break a bad habit? Well, why is it so hard to break? Why is it so hard to form a good habit? Well, it's so hard to break. Well, it's so easy to continue with the bad habits on itself. It's interesting. So obviously, if the cue, which again, and we say this is what triggers our mental framework. So if the cue is invisible, then there is highly unlikely for you to notice actually the need to make a decision. And remember, the tiny decisions, eventually, when repeated over the time, it's what becomes a habit. So if you make it invisible, then on the craving part, you also make it unattractive. Then your mental will not actually be triggered to go to the response. And if by any chance you still continue to the further step, then on the response, let it be difficult for you to do it. So there is noise. And again, and this is whereby if your brain finds a way around the difficulty, then make the reward unsatisfying. So even if eventually you do it, you don't get any reward at all. So what is going to happen to the brain is this loop will be less likely for you to come back again to it. Because every time there's always a barrier from the first law all the way to the second. It's very interesting, even to me, to learn this. And as I said, this is my very first time to read this book, so trust me, I'm just reacting to based on what I'm seeing as I continue to read. So thank you so much, guys, for joining in. Mentara, I know you're very good author. Have you read this book? What are your thoughts? And maybe in the future we can actually chambua one of your books, if you'd allow us. Sometime back, this reminds me, I used one of the gigs I used to do while in uni was test websites. So it's funny because you'll be paid $3 to $5 for like a 5 minutes task to review a website, and the designer or the person who made that website is not really interested on your understanding, or is really interested on the first whatever comes first, and he'd say, speak your mind loud. And actually, this is what we are doing in this book. And obviously, I can trust me, I'll have to, again, go back, go through those 2 chapters again so that I can be able to simmer. But it's very interesting. Now, for you, Mentara, I feel you can bring your book. You see our reaction first. So we have not read about it, and we are trying to read. And this is why, by just like those websites, the purpose was to understand how the user interface is. Is it easier to navigate? So if you're getting, for example, to shortcut or checkout, is it easier? And that's what they wanted. So this is what I get when I read a book for the first time. If I can be able to understand, if I can be able to break down the comprehensive ideas, because the goal, it's not to read this book. The goal is to figure out a way to adopt habits or good decisions or anything that is going to help us succeed. And as I said, success is very different from what I think is success and what you think. But whatever it is, so that these habits, these decisions, they can help us to become what we feel we think or achieve as success. So it's just interesting. And thank you guys for joining at YT and as well at TikTok at the same time. It's interesting, he says, it will be responsible for me to claim that these follows the exhaustive framework for changing any human behavior. But I think they are close. As you'll soon see, the four laws of behavior change apply to nearly every field, from sports, politics, art, medicine, comedy to management. These laws can be used no matter what challenge you're facing. There is no need for completely different strategy for each habit. And then he says, when you want to change your behavior, you simply ask yourself, and this is where it gets juicy now. How can I make it obvious? And then the second question you ask yourself is, how can I make it attractive? That one is, how can I make it easy? And the last bit is, how can I make it satisfying? So he goes on to say, if you have ever wondered, why don't I do what I say I'm going to do? Why don't I lose the weight or stop smoking or save for retirement or start a side business? Why do I say something is important but never seem to make time for it? The answers to those questions can be found somewhere in these four laws. The key to creating good habits and breaking bad ones is to understand these fundamental laws, how to alter them to your specification. Each goal is doomed to fail if it goes against the grain of human nature. So ultimately, your habits are shaped by the system in your life. And in the chapters that follow, he goes on to say, we'll discuss these laws which he have introduced earlier on and show maybe how they can create a lasting. It's very interesting. So the first law, make it obvious. I don't want to go through it for now. I keep saying the same thing. So let me know. Let me see. Anita, and thank you so much for joining. Matt Mutama, thank you. Jakes, thank you so much, as well as Anonymous. You're the real OG. Tell you what, Anonymous, if I reach now 4K, then I will leave. The same case at YT. I feel we've been really growing, and also let me use this opportunity to say thank you so much for the guys who have really supported the Afrifama. I feel, let me check where the goal we are. Early in the morning, the funny thing is, as creators, we are always also fixated with the numbers. So let me see. We had this crazy goal at the beginning of the year, and we wanted to achieve 4,500 subscribers by the end of December. And I feel I'm very confident because we actually almost. So at the moment, we are around 4,481 subs. So if you're on TikTok and you love what we do, most of my videos for the last 2 years, you can find them at YT. On TikTok, I only do shorts. I haven't done a lot of work. And possibly this is my most overwhelming one work I've ever done. But it's good. So we still have 19 to go. And how many days? Today is on 11. So if you ask me, thank you so much, Anonymous. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's good. So I feel maybe in the next 3 weeks, It's still good time. We'll be able to achieve what is 100 minus 81. And I don't want to say I'm bad at maths, because if I say that, I would have created a habit. An ultimate rate, if I feed it over the time, then I don't know. So we are like 19 people to go. So it'd be interesting to see. But that was fast, because I never actually thought this week we were going to achieve that. So for anyone at YT who have made it possible, and at TikTok, um, you guys, you're the real OGs. Thank you so much. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Let me know if there's any question at YT before I leave. I can't even believe we've done almost 2 hours. Wow. Maybe in the future we should do our own marathon. It would be crazy. And also now, I think at this moment I should also give out a shout out. So there's amazing bookstore whereby most of the time I do get most, whether it's ebook, whether it's hard copies, depends. I'm actually trying to remember the name, because if they're in the stream, it's called, I think, Urban Bookstore at TikTok. They do like very good reviews, and I think I'll try to see which book they're checking out today. So in case you're wondering where you can get this book, yeah, you can definitely check it if you're from the Kenyan side. It's a very good book, and they'll get you sorted as well. So that is it, guys. 2 hours, 2 chapters, and done and dusted. That is like the longest I've ever done. It was supposed to be like 1 hour. I have no idea how we ended up 2 hours in. So Anonymous, do you think this was a very good albeit like the first time? So we were all hearing it for the first time. Is it making sense for those first 2 weeks, and as well as Mr. Martin, as well as Miss Thu? Do you guys think it makes a lot of sense? Or is there somewhere you feel still bado iko some issues? Let me know before I leave the stream. It'll be interesting to hear your thoughts. And I promise on Saturday we'll come to look at these 4 laws, starting with the first one of making it obvious. So does the author of this book make it obvious that we got to understand how to go through the whole habits, formations, and everything? Don't be shy to let me know what you think. And actually, the first law is actually a chapter by its own. So we can look on Saturday the first law, that is on making it obvious. Then we can look on that is the first chapter. Then the best way to start new habit, that would be chapter 5. So we can do 4 and 5 on Saturday mid-afternoon, mid-morning. I always have a meetup with my team, so that might be not ideal. Yeah. You're saying it's good? Definitely. I know it's a bit not an easy read, because there are some places I had even to think hard, but it's a very good read. That's the fact, I can assure you. It's able to break down like, things like I didn't even know about the baseline, like the cue, the craving, the response, the reward, and actually how you use all things and form them into laws. Obviously, it's a long way to go. It's like today, everything I've been reading is so hard. Because even the other book on thinking fast and slow is also very technical. I guess that's where we are reading it together. I see it. Thank you. I see someone says makes a lot of sense. Sense makes a lot of sense, Bona Hillary. It's a very insightful conversation and worthy your time. Well done. Thank you so much. I guess that's why we do what we do, and that's why we share. So allow me to end the stream right here, and let's catch up on weekend. Also, for anyone who is also making videos, I think tomorrow I'll have I think just a live stream as I create I have an amazing video I'm working on at the moment as I edit. So if you're interested to know how I edit my videos, especially for the longs for the YT, feel free to join the stream tomorrow, mid-morning hours. The good thing is, in these sluggish days of December, we're not very busy, so I get to create more time to be online, and I also want to build a community, get to know you guys, what you're doing, and also share a few bits. Because even with the creation is a good thing. If someone is interested, they have a lot of they can learn. So thank you, and see you either tomorrow or on Saturday. So stream number 1 done.